and then swing that microphone over towards you.
Closer? Not so close? What?
I think that's actually pretty good. Just make it comfortable and make it so that you're speaking pretty close into it.
Okay. Well, it's pretty close.
So how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
Did you get sleep?
Actually, I got a decent amount of sleep. I couldn't believe it. How about you?
I thought I got a good amount of sleep too. I woke up in the middle of the night as usual. I'm still messing with the air conditioning thing.
Yeah.
It's really because it heats up, but it's so loud. So I have to figure out whether I can like sleep with the air conditioning on or just make it cool enough so that I can sleep through the night.
Right. Well, it's still experimental, huh?
Yeah. But I'll figure it out. It's not too bad.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I woke up at 3 or something and then stayed up for an hour, went back to sleep and all that usual thing.
Yeah. I don't know what time I woke up, but I could not have been awake very long because I have really very little memory of it. So
Yeah. So I was thinking about what to talk about on this.
Sure.
I was wondering about how you got into photography because you said you developed negatives in your basement.
Yes.
How did you get into that?
Well, you know what? I don't. Well, actually, at my bar mitzvah, my aunt and uncle, who were my godmother and godfather, bought me a camera, which I had asked for. And I did the usual, send the film away, get back pictures, and I just kept on thinking how much fun it would be to be more creative. I never had a chance to act on it until after we were in the house. And the room, you may remember one room where we had a lot of junk.
I do remember that room. That was a
Okay.
fun one to look through.
Right. Well, I blacked out the windows with some paint, and I discovered that I didn't have to make it absolutely light proof, that if a little light coming under the crack of the door was no big deal. And I bought black and white developing things, a little I guess it looked like a little covered cup that you put the film in, and then you added the chemicals and smushed it around, and poured it out. And the next thing you know, you had a set of negatives, and of course then I got an enlarger and paper and chemicals, and I just had so much fun from then on, especially with the enlarger. You could X things out. You could make certain areas lighter.
What does that mean, enlarger?
Enlarger is it's like a reverse microscope kind of thing. In the top goes the film, and there's a light shining down on it, and the light expands through a lens, and then there's like a board, a totally flat board, where you put the paper that you're going to print on.
Whoa.
And then you expose it, and you do any little, extra stuff that you might want to do. You take the paper, and what I had was like a tube. I put the paper in the tube, closed the tube. Once I did that, the lights could go on, and it was the same process. Add chemicals, smush it around.
And so you had full print pictures.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always wondered about that because I know film pictures are just so small. But, I mean, if there's a way to just print them on good paper.
Right. It depends on the quality of the lens in the enlarger and the paper. It's the same as the pixels, now. You want to have the best resolution possible.
Yeah.
And trying to think, I'm not sure if we have any of my photos hanging up right now, but you might recognize some of them.
Are the ones that are from the beach? Are those ones you took?
More than likely, yes. And then I, expanded into color, but I never developed the film in color. I always sent that away,
Yeah.
to,
I know that's a lot harder to do. You have to have like the right temperature. You have to have all these different chemicals.
Right, right. So that was worth just, and I'd get back, a set of negatives, and then I would just go ahead and print, and the process was the same, except the chemicals were a little different, and I guess the time was a little bit more critical. But and then
Did you have to control the temperature?
Not really, as long as it was like relatively room temperature.
As long as you weren't a crazy person.
Well, and the room was on the cool side because it was on the lower level. And your mom and Uncle Eric got into it with me. A lot of times we would, do the developing, the printing and stuff together, which was an awful lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awful lot of fun.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So you were sending away pictures to get developed from 13 to, what, 30?
I can't remember how long, but for years and years.
And you had the same camera, or
No,
you just,
well, no.
it was your hobby?
I wound up buying two different SLRs. That's the camera where you screw the lens on.
Single lens reflex.
That's it.
Yep.
And a series of lenses, and I just took pictures of everything I could, think of.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, the pictures, there's a couple of pictures I really miss. We had an ellipse of the moon, and I got a good series of pictures, like let's say 5 or 10 minutes apart, showing the phases, and I have no idea what happened to them. And my other picture, which I did not develop, was one of Marilyn Monroe in the beauty pageant, which my mother threw away.
I know that story.
So, and I don't know. I took a lot of pictures of flowers. I took the cameras on vacation wherever we went, and took a lot of pictures of the family, and a whole lot of pictures of wherever we were.
Yeah.
The landscape and the flowers and stuff like that.
I remember I discovered your guys' slides and found your slide view, so I was just flipping through them. You had one of, I guess it was Citizens Bank Park, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, but then one of a couple of a costume party.
It might be. The problem with slides was you needed a slide projector. So you couldn't just sit down with a handful of pictures. And eventually the bulb went, and even more eventually, it was impossible to replace the bulb. So that, unfortunately,
very true.
That kind of went by the wayside. But slides were a nice way to capture pictures.
Same thing, you just sent away, and then they came back with the
but
little
they
orange
were
box.
already, in the colors that they had to be. They weren't negatives, and just projected them up on the wall.
Yeah, that's fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Then how'd you get into keeping flowers? Because obviously over here.
Well, I've always liked flowers. I can't remember not liking them. And I have a thing about plants, that they're living things, and so they deserve a lot of respect and care. And to my mind, the flowers are what they give back to you if you take good care of them. And
It's a good way of thinking.
Yeah, so I really do like flowers.
Yeah. And I remember you always had flowers on the front porch. Do you
Sure.
have flowers in the back of your old house, or just in the front?
Well, remember we had the enclosed
Yeah,
porch.
the big porch with the screens.
The screen. So I did do plants out there, but they of course required a lot less light.
Yeah.
So there weren't very many flowers.
Hmm.
But the thing is that I used to do that I don't now was hanging plants, which I really liked.
That's
But-
what I remember.
Yeah, but it's difficult to water them. So I'm kind of done with them, unfortunately.
You know, I never showed you this. I'm just trying to rack my brain of other fun things that I remember about you telling me. I was driving back from Nashville once, stopped at a gas station, and there was a beautiful car in the parking lot, and I looked, and it looked familiar, it looked familiar because it was the same boat car that you had, that you told me about. I googled it, and I thought, wow, that's a quite the convertible, and just saw it in the
Eldorado convertible.
Eldorado, yeah, and I saw it in a parking lot and thought, just that's quite a car. I couldn't imagine you in it.
Well, I ordered that car to my specifications. I picked everything about it and had to wait several months
How did you
for
do
it
that?
to come in. Well, there was a Cadillac dealer.
Because in my mind, it's like you're picking it on the internet.
Well, no, there
67.
was no internet then. I picked it out of books, color swatches, and I knew what the car was going to look like, and they ordered it for me, and I just kept waiting, and then it finally came, and geez, I just loved that car. But it got 6 miles to the gallon. Of course, gas wasn't terribly expensive then, but still.
To plan your trips.
I must have had it back a half a dozen times to check the mileage, to the point where they said they did some kind of a pressured air test to make sure there were no leaks in the system. But it never got more than 6 miles a gallon. So, of course, today it would be unbelievable.
Yeah. When did you have that car?
Unfortunately, I was in a snowstorm coming back from Aunt Norma's. I was stopped, and a car went around me and unpeeled the front end of the car.
Oh.
And, I took it in, and at that point I thought, this is a sign. And I traded it in for a sedan.
So only a couple years?
A couple years tops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were in a snowstorm, presumably on a highway,
Yeah.
and you had to deal with that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, of course, it was front-wheel drive, but it
Yeah, I was about to say. It's
didn't
probably
have,
front
di-
wheel.
didn't have, like the other things that manage the traction for you.
Hmm.
So, but I was stopped,
Stopped on a highway?
Stop at a light. No.
Oh.
A kind of a highway, but
We're pretty far apart.
yeah. We're good. We're good, dear. So that was quite an experience. And I never got another convertible.
First and last?
Yeah, first and last. But to give you an idea how different things were then, it's like that was like around 1975, give or take a year. I would drive it to the center with the top down, leave it parked outside, and never think twice that somebody might vandalize it or do something to it. And
Wow.
nothing ever happened to it, Now, even if you have the top on your car, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I found that in Tennessee and Kentucky, in the rural areas. Just drove my car up to a business, and I left the car on and running, air conditioning blasting. That's the
Wow.
most important part. But yeah, I was in and out of my car. I didn't know if they were just going to tell me, laugh
Yeah.
in my face, and I'd turn around and go back in my car. So it just came to be, a good just time saver to
Right.
keep the car running.
Right.
And nothing ever happened, but I'm a little more protective now.
Yeah. Well, you're in a different area too, so
It's interesting.
Yeah, I understand that taking an American car to Canada is asking for trouble.
Really?
Well, they don't want us
Oh.
there. They want us, pretty much to stay away. And I was reading an article about some guy who said he really had some problems because if there's a, U.S. license plate on the car, sometimes it gets vandalized.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I hear Quebec City is the hub of the virus right now.
You see what we're doing?
You have to throw it away. Okay.
What is in the bag?
With the yogurt that he didn't get out, I have to throw it away now.
That happened to me just the other week. I got a yogurt from a Wawa and put it in my car, and everything else was in the bag. So when I went back home, I brought the bag in, but the yogurt was just rotten in my car when I came back.
Well, this was in the house, but c'est la vie. It's just the yogurt. I mean, it's not the crown jewels or anything. So, what were you saying?
I'm really serious. You're not 6 feet apart, and it's serious. Put on your mask. We have a very compromised person coming to our house for 2 weeks.
What's your call?
All right, I'll put on my mask if it'll make you go away.
I think my mask is in my car.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you don't even have ears. You got to take off your headphones.
The Lone Ranger.
Yep.
So, I forget what I was saying, but
Cars, maybe?
I've had a lot of cars over the years, and I guess that one was a favorite, and the one I just traded in, the little Civic, was a favorite because it was really peppy, and I felt very safe in it. But it was really kind of low and difficult to get out of. So
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't start appreciating cars until I went down to Nashville, and all the people down there knew everything about cars. Even, women in their 30s had their toolkits with their
really,
engine thingies and battery thingies. I was blown away by how people treated their cars as actual machines. I think my mask is in my car. We're 6 feet away.
well, give him a mask then.
6 feet away. But everybody knew the mechanics of it, and a car was just something that I drove. I got in, I knew how to drive it, but
Right.
people knowing the RPM, safe this, safe that, and popping open their engines and doing this and that, it was really, really something else. They knew how to take care of themselves, and the people that lived out in the real country, pulled up to their house. Dayton's uncle is where I went. They built their own house,
Wow.
and I said, "How do you do it?" She said, "Do it step by step." They just know how to do all the foundation and insulation and drywall and building steps and stuff.
The last one, I'm serious. You're not 6 feet, though. daughter was 5'7".
But talk about not locking a car. There was no house in sight. There's no house in sight.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of near a mountain, but not a lot of trees. Not a lot of trees in Tennessee, so it wasn't like a woodsy area. But I just pulled up into the gravel, just hopped out of the car. It felt like I was at camp. It's really something else. And that's where I shot a shotgun.
Oy.
It was fun.
It's a different life.
It's definitely a different life. Pull that mic a little closer.
Okay?
Yeah. I'm glad I did it. I miss Nashville.
Yeah, I know.
I miss... Whoa. Spotted lanternfly. These things are so annoying.
That's not just the butterfly?
Nope.
Okay.
You've heard about these spotted lanternflies.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the first time I've seen one with the wings spread out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my friend Ed, his whole house outside is trees and
Mm-hmm.
we're covered with them. So he's got this tape he wraps around the tree trunk.
Yeah.
That they crawl up and get stuck. It's absolutely disgusting. Apparently they're destroying a lot of wine and beer,
Really?
industries, and they're not tasty. Apparently, the birds don't eat them, so
Jeez.
we need to make them tastier.
Yeah. Or find some natural predator.
Yep. Someone will take care of it.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah.
I hope. God.
So what else?
What else? It's kind of difficult to think about much stuff these days because I'm not really doing much except the reading.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna ask you about that too. We
Yes.
could run through the books that you've read over this virus time period.
Well, far and away the best one was Crime and Punishment. I had no idea how good a writer Dostoevsky was, and I'm looking forward to Brothers Karamazov, but there's a certain amount of seeing it as a chore also, because I know his books are so rich that it really takes time and you really have to concentrate. It's not like reading anybody else's novel. But I will do that. And right now I am just plodding through Stephen Hawking. Oh my God, what a genius that guy is. Guy was. Wow.
You're reading A Brief History of Time, right?
Yes.
Because there's a briefer history of
I know.
time.
I found that out after I ordered the Brief History of Time.
Yeah.
And besides being a bit easier to understand, it has the advantage of being published years after the original one. So there's more data and more information that's up to date. But that's okay because, it's getting into things that I know nothing about. So it's all new for me anyway.
Yeah.
And
Does it talk about the macro or just the micro?
Mostly micro. He mentions macro. And he loves to talk about 1,000 million of this, 1,000 million of that. And he tells you or he shows you how many zeros that is. And it's incomprehensible, really. And his mind works so amazingly that he'll postulate something and he'll say, "Well, if this is true, that must be true." And I'm sitting there wondering, why must that be true? I don't understand how you got from A to B. And right now, I'm reading about what's it called? The thing, the square root of 1 is
Imaginary.
Imaginary time and real time, and maybe we're living in imaginary time and we don't know it. And it's like, what are you talking about, Mister? And all the particles that collide and this, kind of destruct each other and give off energy. Oh, it's just amazing. I know I'll read something else by him because it's just, I there's some other authors that are supposed to be really good too.
Do you know who Richard Feynman is?
That's exactly the one I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, and I don't know where I got the information, that his works are also made for people that are not physicists. And
yeah, he has an interesting. I forget. I learned about his kind of shtick, his story, his whatever, at one point, but he was very much into the whole perspective of physics, because some physicists take it way too seriously, where some people are just super into sports and they know everything,
right,
and they're into arguing this and arguing that, and they say a fanatic is someone who can't change their mind and can't change the subject.
That's very good.
So there are some people that take it with sports, some people take it with movies or video games,
right,
TV, politics. Some people take it with physics, and it's hard when they just get so into their own bubble, and especially when they're professors. A lot of physics students feel bad about themselves when they're in the lower half of their class, but Feynman, one of his kind of things was that if you're in the, let's say, in the 40th percentile in your graduate level physics class, you're far and away better off, in with a lot of opportunities, more opportunities than most of the other people in the university. So his shtick was giving a little more perspective and treating things a little more gently, and not getting wrapped up in the infinite infinities and square roots of Schrodinger's equations, stuff like that. And he had some really interesting discoveries with how particles. So you know about quarks, right?
Yeah, sort of.
So a proton is an up, up, down, and a neutron is like a down, down, up. I think I might have gotten them reversed, but for all intents and purposes. So when a neutron and a proton collide in such a way, they can trade a quark, or two quarks, or something. So you can have a neutron, a proton, and I guess that's a bad example. Maybe a neutron and a proton, they collide, and then two different particles,
right,
electron and a neutrino, come out. And so they can trade quarks, and two particles can collide and make two completely different particles. So he made Feynman diagrams, which were really elegant ways of showing the energy transfer, the force carrier, I think it's called, bosons. I don't know.
I haven't gotten to that part yet.
It's past me. That was a different life. I'm not very much interested in hard science anymore.
So, what got you to take physics in the first place?
Probably the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
It was after chemistry, biology, chemistry, and then physics.
Right, that's how we did it.
Yeah, and I can't remember what clicked, Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was that I felt like I could do it, felt like I could get the right answer. Chemistry was a little more challenging for me. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but the fact that it was less numbers and more abstract stuff, I wasn't really into. But there were some YouTube channels that were really good. Minute Physics was one that really explained stuff, and for the majority, everything I learned in school was one thing, but when I could learn it on the internet, watch these videos of people taking it to a higher level, and I could feel special of, oh, I know how to do this before they even teach it. That was what I really liked. When you taught me multiplication, 2-digit multiplication, and when I was in 3rd grade, and I was in class not paying attention, scribbling 23 times 54 on my paper. One time the teacher said, "Aaron, what are you writing? Are you passing notes?" And he said, she said, like, "Jenna, read what's on Aaron's paper." And I'm blushing, my hand in my head. She says 23 times 54, and there was nothing she could say. But I'm kind of annoyed that she didn't approach me afterwards and say, "I could give you some extra problems. I can help you out with this." It was dead on arrival.
Well, I remember also when you got into trouble when I taught you about the sides of a right triangle.
The Pythagorean theorem.
Pythagorean theorem.
Oh yeah, I got in big trouble for that one.
They were really annoyed that you knew it. I mean, it was like, is it bad to have knowledge? I mean, geez.
And it was a writing and math question. There were the math homework was a bunch of simple problems, number plus number equals number. And then at the bottom, there was an explain your answer question, 1 or 2 for each homework. And this one had a right triangle, and there was some information that we missed. We just saw a leg, and the hypotenuse. And you said, well, you would solve this with the Pythagorean theorem. I said, what's that? So we went into this. We spent, 30 minutes, and my mind was blown. So I wrote, there were, 4 lines where you could explain your answer. I went 6-7 lines beneath the space, and my hand shot up in class. Everyone was hysterically laughing when I was going through a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is the hypotenuse. And so that was a very proud moment of my life.
Right.
Because, if I didn't get called on, I would have been pretty upset. But then it ended up being that we just missed a piece of information that was obvious. Maybe the hypotenuse said it was 2 times the leg or something.
Yeah, I don't remember that part, but there was some way that you could do it without using actual math and substituting. But when I saw those values, it's the first thing that came into my mind. Why mess around with stuff that's harder to, at least to my mind, to understand. So, yeah, I always liked. If I had a really good teacher, I really liked, like geometry and calculus. They were really neat subjects for me.
Calculus is great. I don't understand. Well, maybe I do understand why people think it's scary because it's called calculus.
Yeah.
But it's just another way of looking at graphs.
Well,
when turning math into graphs.
When you learn just a few equations, you can solve so many different things that when you just read it without knowing what equation to apply, it sounds ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And then you plug in the equation, you get the differential, and the answer is 37. Really? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's a crime that you learn differentiation in its very explicit form, where you have x plus a in the numerator and x plus a in the denominator, and you have to figure out the slope with this very, massively complicated process. It's annoying that you do that first, because the simple way of differentiating equations just is so elegant, and
I know.
you bog down all these people who are scared of math in the first place with a complicated process when the simple one is so easy.
Right. It's almost like an initiation. You
It is.
You got to go through the tough part to get to the fun.
Yeah, I don't think it should be, because I was in calculus when I was in AP Physics. And in AP Physics, you're supposed to have already taken calculus. And I had Megan.
Right.
I had Megan at the time tutoring me, she was just a genius. So she taught me pretty much the whole year of calculus in 2 weeks.
Oh boy.
And I thought I was talk about being on your high horse in calculus class. I was quite a pain.
Oh, oh yeah. So, yeah.
You said when you took geometry, it all clicked one day, right?
Well, the first couple weeks, maybe month, I didn't get it. I just absolutely didn't understand what they wanted me to prove. And I don't remember what it was, but all of a sudden I saw it. And once I saw it, everything else fell into line, and geometry became fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a poor teacher. One of the few poor teachers that I had in high school, because almost all of them were just fantastic. And but this guy just didn't explain anything. I don't know what the deal was, and I'm looking, looking at a bunch of triangles and not understanding. And then all of a sudden I said, oh my God, that's what it is. I had the same kind of experience in med school. The first time I was supposed to present a patient, I didn't know how to do it. And so I fumped it around and I jumped all over the place. And the professor got really annoyed. And so then I looked up, I don't remember exactly what I looked up, but it was how somebody else presented a patient. And it was so obvious, you do this first, you do the history first, you do the vital signs, you do the examination, you do your conclusions. And once I did that, I could do it like a snap. But geez, that first presentation was just awful. It was. I remember there was a tumor in somebody's bowel, and he said to me, well, where was the tumor located? And I said, oh, kind of high up. He said, what do you mean kind of high up? How many centimeters up was it? Oh, jeez.
What was med school like for you?
Well, first of all, it was an awakening, because I don't know why, but I thought med school would be loaded with intellectuals, and it's not. It's loaded with good students and bright people. I mean, you can't be dumb and go to med school, but it's a trade school. It's not, like a university. Now, maybe that's different now because there's so many new and, interesting things. But basically, you learned how to diagnose, or you learned how to cut, or you learned how to prescribe meds, all of which are very important to being a good doctor, but don't require intellectual curiosity or, stuff. So that was really wild for me. And there were a lot of my friends, of course, pretty much everybody was Jewish and worried about getting into med school. And so most of them did not get into Penn, which was like the top school in the city. And they went on and did fine. But, there was also the thing where you see in a lot of universities now, which they were obviously trying to do geographic, mix. So somebody from, let's say, Kansas had a better shot than somebody from Philly and stuff like that. So there were some people that they were okay because obviously they got through, but they just were not particularly interesting to talk to. So,
did you get to know a lot of different people?
Fair amount. I mean,
you still lived at home at that point, right?
Oh yeah, till I got married. So, like the first couple years, you're pretty much in class together. Like anatomy lab, everybody goes to. Biochemistry, everybody goes to. But soon, in the second year, you start being portioned off by what your ward rotation is, so that you may relate to, let's say, half a dozen other people, and rarely see the other folks, except, let's say, in a lecture at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so it got more and more, like divided. And I didn't even spend the four of us who went, who did our cadaver together, first course anatomy, remained in a close bond the first 2 years. But then we were, we were sent to different places to study further, so we lost contact for the most part. And especially the third and fourth year, you don't have a lot of time for social stuff. You're so busy trying to learn, everything.
Yeah. Did you have was something like biochemistry, was that mathematically rigorous or intellectually rigorous?
Well, the thing for me in biochemistry was that I had a very difficult course in my senior year in college. It was just called chemistry, but it was biochemistry. So I came into the course knowing an awful lot that you wouldn't ordinarily know. So it was reasonably easy for me. It was very interesting because right around that time was when DNA was first discovered, and that was a big deal, but I had already studied it. So
that's incredible.
Isn't it amazing to think that I was alive when that wasn't known?
Yeah.
So
did you learn in a textbook, or was your professor in on a lot of information?
Well, my college professor was in from the very beginning. I mean, he knew, I don't know quite why, but he knew exactly what was going on in the research. In med school, I don't remember much about the instruction. It was decent, The professors in med school knew their stuff. I mean, they were good, for the most part, good teachers, and some of them were just there because that was something they had to do. So
that's very interesting.
Now, one thing I really lucked out on was I got to scrub in surgery with some really not just good surgeons, but nice people. And there were many surgeons who were not nice people and were very cruel to the med students.
I guess they don't have to be. The patient's out.
Look, I mean,
they're getting their job done, whether they're nice or not.
Basically, what you want in your surgeon is a very good technician. Now, I happen to want, in addition, somebody who's a mensch, but he certainly doesn't have to be like a TV star. Doesn't have to be Mr. Personality, but somebody I can talk to, and somebody who obviously cares and doesn't see veins and arteries when he looks at you. But I just happened to luck out that everybody was a nice guy and also wanted to teach the med students. It wasn't a chore to them. They would show you stuff. They would let you hold the retractor a certain place. They'd let you cut, sutures. Sometimes they'd let you do part of the operation, which was, oh God. Oy. And it was a better experience than I expected. And when I went into my internship, the surgeons in the hospital were really, really good guys. Very, very pleasant. Interested in teaching and helping you get along. So that part was good.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And that was towards the end of your medical school?
Yeah, well, the first 2 years are pretty much basic sciences. And towards the end of the second year, you go on wards pretty much just to learn about physical diagnosis. And then third and fourth year is all wards. I mean, that's basically you're like almost an intern.
Mm-hmm. And you said that prepared you really well, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing with Penn Med was they told you the very first day how difficult it was to get in, which of course everybody knew. They said, once you're here, you will graduate unless you really screw up. And they were true to their word. The only people I know who did not graduate, there was a scandal in my class. About 3 or 4 guys stole an exam, and it was found out, and they were thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, people went through. If there was a need for help was provided. So,
I remember when Evan was applying to med schools. I think that was that time when he was applying to med schools. He had big interviews with a lot of scowling professionals.
Right.
And they were judging him not just based on his information, but based on his personality and the way he interacted and stuff. Did you have a lot of experiences with scary interviews?
I did not have, like, boards of people interviewing me. All my interviews were one-on-one, except at Hahnemann, I think it was 3-on-1. But basically, that interview was them trying to convince me to come there. They said, you'll love this. They said to me, if you got admitted here and admitted to Penn, where would you go? And of course, I'm not dumb. I said, I'd come here, knowing that if I got admitted to Penn, they, don't get in my way trying to sign up.
Yeah, they wouldn't see the last of you.
And then, I don't know if I ever told you, I got out of there. I had been accepted, and my first thing was to call Penn, and I basically said to them, I'm really good. You better come and get me. And they said, we'll take our time. But I did get chosen among the first 6 that were admitted. So, and that was really a great experience, just knowing that, I had done something really good.
Did you guys celebrate?
I don't remember how. I'm just, So,
the rest is history.
Yeah. It's funny looking back on the time when I didn't know if I'd ever get in. Some of the tension during that time, I kind of miss, because looking back is not quite as exciting as looking ahead. And of course, many of my friends from Central were applying to med schools. So we were always talking about who got in, who didn't, who had to go out of town. I mean, it was just, like, I wouldn't call it gossip because we were all supportive of each other. But, information, who did this, who did that. I think he should have got in, that kind of stuff. So, yep. Yep.
Was there were all of your friends Jewish?
Pretty much. The one guy, one of the guys at my anatomy table was not. Central was a Jewish school. I mean, there were very, very few non-Jews. And at that time, very few blacks.
What was your experience like?
Well,
finding, emerging and seeing discrimination, I suppose.
At that time, I didn't think of it as discrimination. It just seemed natural to me. I did not know enough.
What seemed natural?
That there weren't that many blacks
Mm-hmm.
In the school. And
did you know any people at other schools and see different communities of I don't know, let's say living in Philadelphia, or were you kind of in a bubble and then grew up?
I was in a bubble. My neighborhood was 99% Jewish. And I think I've told you, the day that my mother sat down and said to me, "We're a minority," I looked at her like she was crazy. What do you mean we're a minority? Everybody I know is Jewish. But then I went to junior high school, which was very different, because that took people from all over the city. And that was kind of an awakening. And I think I've also told you, one of the reasons I went to Central, I had two main reasons. First reason was I wanted to get out of junior high school, and I could get out a year early. And the second reason was you had to take a test to get in. And I figured if you have to take a test, it must be good. So I took the test. I didn't know what the hell I was getting into, and it was a very, very good decision.
And you were 14?
About 14, yeah. Yeah. It would been after my bar mitzvah. But getting out of there and not having to go in ninth grade, that was just a real blessing. Because that school was poor. I mean, that was really poor teachers, poor curriculum.
Were you kind of over it when you were in class?
I just knew I was wasting my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have done almost anything to get out.
And then how'd you learn about Central?
I don't remember. It's just like the name suddenly appeared. And people would say, are you going to apply to go to Central? Well, geez, I don't know. What do you have to do, So I applied.
What was the diversity like in medical school?
That was diverse. It was diverse geographically, and Jews were a distinct minority, and there were only, I believe, 6 women in my class, and now it's 50-50.
Even more.
I think you're right. But then it was really unusual to see a woman in med school.
Wow.
Yep.
Fascinating. Just so much. How so much can change in 100 years.
Yep.
Not that you're 100.
Well, I was going to say I haven't been around for 100 years, but say 70 or 80 years, a lot has changed. A whole lot has changed, and a lot of it for the better. Really,
Yeah. Yeah. So many good female doctors and nurses.
they're female doctors, in my mind, are generally better,
Yeah, I'd agree.
and it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing that, I guess birth control was a big part of it,
That could be.
but yeah, it's amazing the opportunity to grow a society so effectively, so quickly.
Well, when I was in college, first of all, the women in liberal arts went to the college for women.
The mic
it was
closer.
separate. Pardon me?
Pull the mic closer.
The women liberal arts were in college for women, which was we were in the same classes, but still, there was a distinction. When I was in college, the meeting point was Houston Hall, which was like a nice old Ivy type building, and there was a lounge as you walked in. Only men were allowed. Women could not walk in that room. Can you imagine that? And for the most part, the women became teachers or nurses. Most everything else was closed to them. I mean, there were some really, unusual ones who became chemists or physicists and, pursued different courses. But it wasn't easy for them, not at all. Look at the story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When she was, like such a bright student, couldn't get a job in New York.
Yeah, that was a brutal movie.
It was, but
there were two. There was the movie and the documentary, which
Right.
everyone's doing that nowadays. There's the movie and the documentary for, I don't know, something else. But I saw the movie, but not the documentary.
I think. Well, I saw both, and I thought both were excellent. And to my mind, she is really a hero. She's something else. So,
I think that might be a good place to just wrap it up for the day.
okay,
How was this?
I enjoyed it.
Isn't this cool? The
I enjoyed
technology
it.
with the headphones and the mics.
It's amazing. I still don't get how you learned how to do it, but I'm also not surprised that you learned how to do it because you just learn things. That's all. You're really, really bright and energetic. So
The coffee drink helps.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to podcasts since Jacob showed me Sam Harris in 10th grade.
Right.
Maybe 11th. But it was a real learning curve to pay attention to a conversation that much because before that I was all numbers. I was all physics and math
That's right.
and equations and stuff. So just paying attention for an hour-long conversation was really challenging. But once I got the hang of it, I started to really see expertise on a different level and come to see how adults explain things, and that was kind of a breakthrough for me.
yeah. I could see how your mind would wander, and you have to keep focusing.
Yeah,
But
but it's fun. It's fun to do. It's fun to listen.
yeah,
And I just see it as a modern day time capsule.
you're probably right. You're probably right.
But anyway, thanks for doing this, and we'll do it
Oh,
again.
Thank you.
Of course.
So,
Alrighty.
push this out.
Yep.